You're destroying yourself, but not in ways the world can see. You show up, you smile, you even laugh at the right times, and yet every day you feel a little less alive, not because something huge happened, not because life collapsed in one blow, but because you've been bleeding in silence. For years, you say yes when you mean no. You stay quiet when your soul wants to scream. You shrink yourself to keep others comfortable. You scroll, you numb, you distract. But the truth always returns. When the noise fades at night, in the mirror, when no one's watching, you wonder where your fire went, where your voice went, where you went, and that ache in your chest. That's not weakness. That's the sound of your soul asking you to stop. Most men don't break loudly. They break in silence, one forgotten part at a time. And if you're not careful, you'll wake up one day a stranger to yourself. This is how it begins. It doesn't happen all at once. You don't just wake up broken. You chip away at yourself, slowly, silently, day after day. At first it looks harmless. You avoid an argument. You swallow a truth. You agree with something that feels wrong, just to keep the peace, and people praise you for it. They call you polite, easygoing, a good man, but deep down, you know something's shifting. The first time you say yes when you mean no, it stings. The second time it still feels wrong, but a little less. By the fifth or sixth time, you've already stopped noticing. You're on autopilot now. You become the man who's always fine. The man who never complains, never confronts, never chooses himself. And you tell yourself this is strength. That being calm, silent, agreeable is noble. That sacrificing your needs is what makes you valuable. But it's not strength. It's erasure. You're not being peaceful. You're being erased by your own hands. Because every time you betray what you feel, you lose a piece of who you are, and the tragedy is, no one sees it. There's no funeral for the man you used to be, no ceremony for the voice you buried. You still show up, you still get things done, but inside, you're fading. You stop dreaming, you stop laughing the way you used to, you stop looking in the mirror with pride. You begin to crave noise, music, screens, distractions, anything that drowns out the silence where your truth used to live. And in that silence, you begin to rot. Not visibly, not in a way the world can point at, but in your spirit, in your soul. That's how self-destruction begins, not with chaos, but with quiet. With 1,000 moments where you abandon yourself, believing it's the right thing to do. But deep down, you know. You feel it every time your heart goes unheard, every time your truth goes unspoken. You feel it, and yet you keep going, because you're scared. Scared to cause conflict, scared to disappoint, scared to stand alone. So you keep choosing peace, even when it costs you your fire. But there's a name for peace without truth. It's not kindness, it's not maturity, it's self-destruction, and it always starts small. There are always signs, but you learn to silence them. You tell yourself you're just tired, that this is what life is supposed to feel like, but it's not. It's not normal to wake up and feel empty. It's not normal to dread silence, to avoid being alone with your own thoughts. That's not peace, it's avoidance. The first warning sign is the weight in your chest that you pretend isn't there. You call it stress. You blame the job, the bills, the noise of life, but deep down, you know, you've been lying to yourself. You've been pretending to be someone you're not for too long. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." But how often do you live the opposite? How often do you do what feels wrong? Because it's easier. Because it keeps the illusion going. You feel distant from your own body, disconnected from your own desires. You scroll mindlessly, eat without hunger, talk without purpose. Life becomes something you survive, not something you live. Seneca said, "While we are postponing, life speeds by." And you can feel it. The days slipping through your fingers like sand. You keep saying, "I'll fix it someday." But someday never comes, and part of you already knows that. You start to resent people, not because they hurt you, but because they reflect the courage you lack. The man who speaks his truth, you envy him. The one who walks away from what doesn't serve him. You call him selfish, but what you really mean is, "I wish I had that kind of strength." You become cynical. You mock dreams. You roll your eyes at hope. But it's not wisdom. It's grief. The grief of a man who stopped believing in himself. Epictetus once said, "You may fetter my leg, but not even Zeus has the power to break my freedom of choice." But you gave up that freedom willingly, not to a god, to comfort, to fear, to the slow death of convenience. And worst of all, you convince yourself you're fine. You say, "At least I'm not falling apart." But you are, just quietly. No one sees the man who's dying inside, because he still shows up, still smiles, still gets things done. But when you're alone, when no one's watching, that's when you see the truth. The man in the mirror isn't proud. He's tired, he's fading, and he's asking, "How did I end up like this?" You've been told to be strong, to hold it together, to never show weakness, so you built a mask, not of steel, but of silence. You thought, "If I don't talk about it, it'll go away. If I stay quiet, they'll respect me. If I endure it alone, I'll become unbreakable." But you didn't become unbreakable. You became unreachable. The people around you stopped seeing the real you, because even you forgot who that was. You turned pain into sarcasm, disappointment into distraction, longing into numbness, and the world called you strong. But it wasn't strength. It was detachment. It was survival. It was endurance without direction. Seneca warned, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage." But you stopped living. You started enduring, existing, wearing your emptiness like armor. You show no emotion, and you call that Stoicism. But that's not what the Stoics meant. They didn't teach apathy. They taught presence. They taught mastery over your impulses, not the burial of your truth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." But how can you be a good man if you don't even know where your soul has gone? You think being silent makes you mysterious, that holding back makes you masculine. But the truth is, you're not being quiet to stay in control. You're being quiet because you're afraid of what might come out. You're not withholding to stay powerful. You're withholding because you've lost the words. Real strength isn't the absence of emotion. It's the courage to face it, to name it, to own it, to feel grief without letting it define you, to feel anger without letting it control you, to feel love without fearing what it might cost. Epictetus reminded us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. But you've stopped reacting, stopped engaging. You've become so good at pretending nothing touches you that nothing really does. And now, you wonder why nothing moves you anymore. Because numbness is not power. Apathy is not peace. Silence is not always wisdom. Sometimes it's a cage, one you built and now don't know how to escape. It never feels like a movie scene. No dramatic collapse, no big moment, just a pause, a crack in the rhythm. You're brushing your teeth, staring at yourself in the mirror, and suddenly you don't recognize the man looking back. There's nothing wrong with your face. It's not that. It's something behind the eyes, something missing, and for the first time in a long time, you whisper a question you've been too afraid to ask. Who the hell am I becoming? You feel the question echo in your chest. It's not new. It's been there for years. You just learned to ignore it. You think about how long it's been since you felt proud of yourself, not for what you do, not for what you provide, proud of who you are when no one's watching. And that's when the memories start flooding in. You remember a version of you that had fire, a man who spoke with conviction, who laughed with his whole body, who had opinions even if they weren't popular, who didn't apologize for wanting more. Where did he go? At first you blame the world, the pressure, the expectations, the disappointments. You tell yourself, they wore me down, they drained me, they made me this way. But then another voice speaks up, quiet but firm. No. You gave them permission, and that voice is right. You traded honesty for harmony, fire for approval, authenticity for survival. You wanted to be liked, so you stopped being real. You wanted to be accepted, so you stopped being whole. And now, here you are, successful, maybe respected even, but hollow. That's when the ache sets in. A kind of grief you can't name. It's not about what you lost. It's about who you left behind. You realize how many years you spent trying to be enough for everyone else, but never once asked what enough meant to you. You see how often you stayed quiet when your soul was begging you to speak. How often you tolerated what you knew was killing your spirit. You feel sick, not in your body, in your soul. And yet there's a strange beauty in it, because for the first time in so long, you're not numbing it. You're not distracting yourself. You're not running. You're present, present with your pain, present with your truth, present with the broken pieces of the man you used to be. And in that silence, something shifts. You don't feel better, but you feel real. You don't feel strong, but you feel honest. And that is the beginning, not the solution, not the victory, but the first breath after years of holding it in, the beginning of return, of reckoning, of choosing yourself again, one quiet moment at a time. There's a version of you you've been too tired, too afraid, too distracted to become. He's not louder, not richer, not more admired, but he's alive, fully present in his own skin, grounded in his own choices. He doesn't fake peace to avoid conflict. He doesn't chase approval to feel worthy. He doesn't fold every time life gets heavy. He's not perfect, but he's whole. And you feel him, don't you? In the quiet moments, when the mask slips, when no one's watching, when something in your chest whispers, "Come back." You used to dream about being that man. Now you settle for surviving. But here's the truth, he never left. You just stopped choosing him. You chose comfort over growth, noise over reflection, pleasing others over respecting yourself. And you can feel it, the weight, the tension between who you are and who you could be. Seneca said, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." You've waited for the right time, for clarity, for a sign. But life doesn't hand you transformation. You have to claim it, and that begins not with a plan, but with a revolt, a quiet rebellion against everything false. You stop laughing when something isn't funny. You say what you mean, even if your voice shakes. You disappoint others to stop abandoning yourself, and slowly, moment by moment, you begin to feel yourself returning, still unsure, still hurting, but no longer hiding. That's the man you could be. And Epictetus reminds us, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That's what's on the line here. Not just success, not just happiness, freedom. The kind that comes when you're outer. Life reflects your inner truth. When your presence speaks louder than your words. When peace replaces performance. That man is waiting, and he's built, not found, through action. Rebuilding doesn't look like what you imagine. It's not glamorous, it's not exciting. It's not a montage with motivational music. It's mundane, it's invisible, it's brutally quiet. You wake up a little earlier, not to hustle, but to sit with yourself. Finally, you clean your space, not because it's messy, but because you're tired of living in chaos. You start saying no more often, not out of anger, but out of clarity. You don't post about your progress. You don't brag about your growth. You just live it silently. And that's silence. It's not empty. It's sacred, because in that silence you're watching yourself change. You stop checking who's watching. You stop needing to explain yourself. You stop asking for permission to heal. And every day, you do one small difficult thing. You make the call you've been avoiding. You take the walk instead of scrolling. You breathe when you want to scream. You tell the truth when it's easier to lie. No applause, no validation. Just you. Choosing strength over and over in the dark. You start feeling strange around people who only knew your old self, because you're not performing anymore. You're not chasing their version of you. You're becoming your own. At first it feels lonely, because noise used to be your comfort. But over time, that silence starts to feel like home. You begin to notice the little wins, how your voice doesn't tremble when you set a boundary, how you can sit with your emotions without drowning in them, how you no longer need to be understood to feel at peace. And that's when you realize something no one told you. Rebuilding isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about becoming someone who no longer needs to break. You're not going back to who you were. You're not rebuilding to impress anyone. You're crafting a man who can stand still while the world spins, quietly, steadily, unshakably. That's the real work, and no one will clap for it. But you'll feel it in your spine, in your breath, in your silence. That's when you know you're back. The world will never ask for a man like you. Calm, present, unshakable. It doesn't reward silence, it rewards performance. But just because it doesn't ask for you doesn't mean it doesn't need you. It needs men who don't run when things get hard, men who don't speak to impress, but live with weight in their words. You won't get applause, you won't be quoted, but someone will feel safer just because you didn't flinch. Someone will breathe deeper because your presence made the room quieter. That's power, the kind you don't shout, the kind you don't post, the kind you build alone. So no, the world won't ask for you, but that's not your job. Your job is to become him anyway. If this message found you, it wasn't by accident. Maybe you're not lost. Maybe you're just waking up. This channel isn't about noise. It's about remembering who you are before the world told you to forget. If you're on that path, if you're rebuilding, if you're choosing strength in silence, then this space was made for you. Subscribe, not for content, but for reminders, for presence, for the quiet work we do together. Because the world needs more men like you, and you don't have to walk it alone.